don't become the image of what some other leader is that you now aspired to be like, but learn from that leader and become your own person.
Welcome to Vibecast, the podcast that dives deep into the heartbeat of workplace culture. I'm your host, Kristi Skutvik. Join me in conversations with extraordinary leaders as we unravel their experiences, both positive and negative, that have impacted workplace culture. This podcast is more than storytelling. It's about actionable insights. Are you ready to transform the vibe at your workplace? Let's go. Today, I had the pleasure to have a fun conversation with Jethro Lloyd. As CEO and president of iLab, Jethro has spent 20 years leading teams in setting and raising the global standard for software quality assurance. Under his leadership, iLab has grown from a small 15-person team of testers to a robust organization of over 800 innovators, strategists, and quality leaders. His commitment to prioritizing the human element above dollars and cents empowers iLab to foster healthy long-term relationships with their clients and staff. Jethro's philosophy of servant leadership is a core element of who he is and was nurtured and encouraged at a young age when he met Nelson Mandela. As a native South African, this experience inspires him to this day. When he is faced with an impossibility, he chooses instead to see opportunity. I can't wait for you to listen in. All right, Jethro, well, I'm super excited. I've heard some amazing things. I know you and I haven't had the opportunity to connect yet. This is our first time. So let's just start out. How would you define a vibe?
So that's an amazing question. And I think for most business leaders, we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out the strategy of the business and where it's going to go and the revenue. And we've got shareholders that put pressure on us all the time. But somewhere along the line, we're going to realize that we're part of a team, and you have to be successful with your team. To be successful, your team has to be involved and engaged. And then that's the terrifying word, that big engagement word. And I remember the first time I heard it about 5 years ago, I was like, good Lord, how do you get people engaged? We have people living in South Africa that are vastly different in age, some on language and in culture. We got a team in Brazil that, very few of them speak English. We got a team here in the United States that are very technical, and they also come from different parts of the United States, and now a big team that's growing in Australia. And I wake up every day and I say, well, I'm a certain way. They might be a very different way. So how do I connect with them? So I think it's probably one of those things that keep us awake at night. I mean, I've never met a leader that says one of the most challenging things that you have to deal with is your team. And by team, it's probably a bad word, but by all the individual contributors to your business that you're trying to work in a cohesive way, in a singular direction, believing in what you're trying to achieve and all that good stuff. And I think, to be honest, about 2 or 3 years ago, I said, I'm done. I said, I can't do this anymore because I felt like the gentleman carrying the donkey across the bridge and then getting somebody else to carry the donkey while I walked that person across the bridge. And no matter what I did, somebody always watched me do it and then complained and said I wasn't doing it in the right way or doing it. And I realized that maybe authenticity as a person was more important, where I said, well, I don't like certain things, but I also know that group over there really likes it. So let's make that available for that group. So as far as our vibe is concerned, what I've spent a lot of time doing is empowering certainly my leaders in all these different territories and their leaders, making sure that they're empowering all their leaders to ensure that they're understanding what makes that group of people or people in that project, division, organization, or sec, what is important to them? I mean, some people want to have, regular coffee parties. Let's make sure that we've got coffee for them. And some people just want to go home. They want to go to work. They want to do really hard work. They want to be fulfilled, and they want to be home by 5 o'clock with their kids. I think it's important to always acknowledge that. So we've managed by accident to get a far better vibe through our organization when we didn't start saying that word engagement and saying things like, well, we're going to give you a survey to see how you engaged. And we're going to ask you 100 questions, what you think we should be doing differently and what we're doing more. Instead, we said, well, if you think we should be doing something, then participate, give us some great ideas, and let's do it. if you believe that your team needs to get together and, do some bowling, well, let's start a bowling club if that's what you guys want to do, if there's enough of you. So, so much so that we now have an avid group of people in the United States that are part of a cricket team. Now, that's the United States, a cricket team, and they're not from countries that play cricket. There's people now that are interested in a different sport because they got the opportunity to try it out, because some of our people in the company said, we want to play cricket in America, which is great. So once I quit all of that, firstly, I felt better. And as much as nobody cares too much as the leader of a business how they feel, I felt much better, because then I could do what I did best. I could just be honest and say, do you want to do it? You don't want to do it? You're happy? You're not happy? People then don't wait for you to hand them out the culture or the vibe. Then they say, well, hey, this is where I work. This is important to me. I want to do this and I want to take initiative and I want to drive it. And then it has so much more meaning for their peers and for other people in the organization. So I hope I answered your question.
No, that was great. I love this simplistic approach, right? Because so often and so many organizations rely on these like big technical systems and analytics, and in the midst of focusing on that, they've missed the point. And so I love what you said about just like, forget the big words, forget the word engagement. I mean, that's what ultimately the goal is, right? Is to have your people be engaged in the business and what they're doing and all of that. But you did it in a way that made it feel real and authentic. And so that's just incredible. Now, I do have a question around that, because I think there would be leaders out there that say, well, I don't trust my leader that they're going to do the right thing, or how am I going to know that there's an ROI? So many organizations are focused on like the financials and meeting the street. Yep. So what's your perspective on that? And how do you measure that things are going better, or are going to still meet the financial demands, or give them the autonomy and have that trust with them? Like, there's so much in that, right?
So therein lies the first problem. You talk engagement, but then you don't trust and give autonomy. So I don't know how you can do both, because I've never interviewed anybody or had one conversation with anybody that said, what was the problem with your previous job? And they said, well, the person was micromanaging me, which was really just a symptom of maybe they weren't doing their job correctly. But if I looked at it from a different perspective and I said, hold on a second, nobody likes to be micromanaged. Everybody believes that everybody goes to work, in my opinion, to do the best they can. Now, are they bad players? We don't build our business around bad players. And if you assess and build your business about bad actors and bad players, I think you're going to have a problem, because you're wasting a lot of money to resolve a tiny percentage of your business versus actually taking control and care for the people that aren't bad players. So autonomy for me is directly related to whether or not you're going to get engagement. And if you don't have autonomy and you don't trust people, if you don't hire people for what they're professionally allowed to do. Now, bear in mind, I have the luxury of always, the people that we have within our organization are technology professionals. So they've either gone to school or they haven't, but they've got, years of experience. They're hired because of their knowledge and their professionalism. What we don't want to do is then hire them for that knowledge and professionalism and then treat them like children. So the reality is, for me, if you're not balancing the autonomy and the trust in the right way, and trust is relative. Do I believe in the metrics? So you asked the question. So how do I know I'm spending the right kind of money? I can commit to you, I've yet to see. So years and years ago, you asked me maybe mistakes maybe we've made. I hired an organization and I said, no, do an assessment. Tell me what our engagement was. And then I realized that it was maybe like the silliest thing I could have ever done, because there is absolutely no way, if I ask you a question. So if I take you to the greatest restaurants in France and I give you the most beautiful champagne and I say, 1 to 10, how do you think this company did? You kind of asking me to criticize it. If I would have said to you, in 1 to 10, tell me how fabulous that meal was. Out of 1 to 10, tell me that was the best champagne if you've ever had in your life. And I change it for a full positive sort of assessment. Now I tell people, say, look, I had a bloody awesome meal. I had a delicious glass of champagne. It was a 10. I had a great time. But if I say to them, well, how comfortable was the chair really? Oh, you're right. No, the chair wasn't that comfortable. Didn't go back. So what happened was the assessment was, people will find criticism if you ask them to find criticism. I know that I get asked this survey. My assumption is you're asking me to help you improve. So of course I'll have an opinion. It doesn't mean I'm going to ever make it happen. Some people have an opinion and say, we need soda fountains on every level and PlayStation corners and unlimited access to X. And I've heard some organizations have gone that far. Now that's where I think you're going to be wasting your money. But I think your ROI speaks to your attention. It speaks to how people are staying within the organization. And in some instances, that's not a good metric, but let's take the positive side of that metric. People staying in the organization, renewing their contracts, wanting to work every year, and saying things like, I want to do more. I want to take on more responsibility. I want more chance to prove myself, I think is your measure and metric that you've been successful in that, rather than the metric that says I'm happy. So that's my worst metric. I come from Africa and I can commit to you that a hippo is incredibly happy lying in the pool that he's gone to the toilet in for the last 6 weeks. But what I can tell you as a veterinarian will tell you is that he's getting sick while he's lying in the water. But, they speak about the happy hippo. He's literally sitting there, excuse my French, in shit all day, but he's very, very happy. So happy is not enough of a metric for me. So people need to feel challenged. They need to feel worthwhile. And I think autonomy also then creates all those cool vibe elements. Like I feel worthwhile. I feel like I've got purpose. The worst one I also heard was 4 years ago, and this one gave me the most anxiety. People have that meaning when they go to work. And I was like, good Lord, I do software quality assurance and testing. We break software all day for large corporations. We have massive teams that sit and basically give everyday bad news to somebody. And now I've got to find meaning in that. Like, hey, your meaning is you break things. You know what I mean? And they were like, no, but then we need to give all our money away and start these charities. And I'm like, I said, now we're getting even more facts. Now we're going to lie to our employees and say, you're doing this because it's for the greater good. And everybody's like, but I do my own stuff for the greater good. You know what I mean? So I think there's a healthy balance. I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of it because we do a lot of these things. But I think if there's not the authenticity in what you're doing, and you're doing it because it's a consultant that's giving you a metric to do it against. And I think the large organizations, and granted, we're not a massive organization. So probably the CEO of an organization with 100,000 employees is looking at me and rolling his eyes and saying, you don't know what we have to go on. And I agree with it. But I can tell you people can see fakes. I can tell you people can read between the line, and you can market yourself to be blue in the face about all the wonderful things that are going to happen when you join an organization. And when they get in there and they don't have autonomy and they don't have authenticity and they treat it like a number, and it's a paint by numbers kind of employment where on Thursdays we do coffee because that's what the consultant said we do. And on Friday nights we do drinks nights and bingo because somebody did an analysis and everybody likes bingo. I think they're going to see through you.
Yeah. And I would even say for 100,000 person organization, yes, is it hard? But you have more leaders then, right? So if you have the right leaders in place, subcultures can be created and vibes can be created through these subcultures. They get to experience their team, but you have to give them the autonomy and trust.
There's all this, how much money am I spending and what I'm getting in return? Give a budget, pick a number, they'll make it work. It's actually very little to do with the money that you're spending on it. It's more about the creating those micro businesses. And maybe you hit the nail on the head, those 100,000 person organizations. My mentor says you don't have to build a 100,000 person business. You have to build 100 businesses that are small businesses and they become one big 100,000 business, and rather build it like pieces of Lego rather than, I build this one monolithic gargantuan business that then creates all sorts of other challenges. But it does mean then you have to have the ideology of autonomy. You have to create leaders that you trust, and you got to give them the boundaries and you give them what you believe they should be doing, and let them put business plans together if they want to do something else. Let them justify the spend and the ROI to that event, etc. So.
Now, you talked about this idea of donkey crossing the bridge, right? Was there something specific or a pivotal moment in your career or your business where you thought something's got to give, and that created the mindset of allowing people to have the autonomy and trusting people more to go do the things that they need to do to lift the vibe?
Definitely. So there was a series of things. So it's the paper cut reality, and then you put your hand in something and then you realize that you got all these paper cuts. And it was more that moment versus one singular event that changed my mind. In the early days, I remember one of my initial struggles of being an early leader is I used to do silly things like forget to say thank you, simple thank you. It was kind of like, here's my instruction and I expect you to do it. When you do it, I take it and I don't say thank you. And it was somebody that was close to me said, why don't you ever say thank you? And I thought, well, I gave you an instruction. I pay your salary. I give you a comfortable chair, and you got a wireless mouse. Look how cool I am. I gave you a wireless mouse. And I'm being facetious, but I didn't think about it. And it was something as small as that, by writing back and saying, thank you very much, smiley face, or I really appreciate what you do. That's what I meant by the paper cuts. Those little events of not saying thank you over a period of time. And it culminated to, at the end of the year, then I would have this big award ceremony. I'd give people awards. And I didn't understand why they're not so excited. You see, because the one that I gave the award to thought, oh, finally he's acknowledged me, the bastard. it's been the whole year. He hasn't said thank you. And I've been working my butt off. And then the other guy that worked equally hard didn't win. You see, because somebody has to win and somebody doesn't win. And the other guy's like, and he never even says thank you. So I didn't even realize that by doing this. So that was one of the events. There was some others, but it was all these kind of like, in a company, you have to have reward and recognition, give people awards, tick. We got to have these meetings, tick. And I realized that if you weren't doing all the other smaller things, if you weren't acknowledging them as people, if you weren't doing things like promotions that people could see active promotions against hard work. And it wasn't so much that other people got promotions, but they saw people from within getting promotions. The early stages when you build a business, you tend to hire in quite a lot of your new leadership and whatever it is. And I didn't realize what impact that was if I didn't balance it out with identifying some people that potentially maybe weren't 100% ready, but giving them the chance to be successful and then mentoring them and supporting them. So I'm giving you two examples. There were quite a few. And then I said about 4 years ago, the realization that what the hell am I doing? It's like we're doing all these things and it's not having quite the impact. Were we having major problems? No, but I wasn't happy. I didn't feel connected.
The feeling that you get, right? When you walk into somewhere or like when you hear from people and you're like, there's something slightly off and I don't like the way it feels.
It's exactly right. And I mean, I can tell you when I go to the Brazil office, although I don't understand 50% of what the guys are saying because they're certainly not speaking English, the passion, the enthusiasm, the excitement and the groups and the clubs and the user groups and all, and these don't cost me any money. It's literally a SharePoint site that they've got up and running and guys meet and it's a few drinks. And by drinks, I mean cold drinks and some eats for people to get together and share ideas. And that's what they love. Why stifle it? Let them do it. Will it work in South Africa? No, it's not going to work in South Africa. That's not what people in South Africa want to do. Other things work in South Africa.
Is there any example that you could give of a leader that has worked with you that didn't come in with the mindset that you have around creating these vibes in the workplace and you turned them around?
There are a few when people came from much larger organizations where there was an enormous amount of corporate structure and this corporate structure in the way in which they did things, included into the way they might have responded to me if they didn't agree with me. And I think that was the bigger part of the vibe. Not every leader likes it that if you don't agree with it. And I don't think you should disagree with me all the time, but sometimes maybe my idea isn't that great. You just agreeing with me is a problem, but it's the manner in which you are creatively responding. In other words, it becomes a creative moment for improvement versus a adversarial moment for who won this argument. And if there isn't an argument or a battle, some people always think there might be. You remember, there's large organizations that it's a dog eat dog. You got to do this one in to get ahead of somebody else. One of the things that I changed completely in my organization was everybody knows if they escalate something to me about somebody else, I go, hold on, let me call that person and let's discuss it. Okay. And then they go, no. And the first time that happens, they go, no, I don't want you to call that person. I say, well, you shouldn't be telling me. They should have the right to explain maybe, and maybe you guys agree with each other, but you've miscommunicated because we all know miscommunication is one of the biggest challenges in communication. And maybe they're breaking it down. You do that a couple of times, and guess what? You create a habit within your organization that they actually phone each other and say, I'm upset about this. You did this to me, whatever it is. But they have to feel trusted or be in a trust scenario that if they have made a mistake and the other person caught them out, that this isn't something that stifles their career or changes their position. And as much as we've watched sort of corporate America to a large degree, when we watch some of the finance, he's the best guy or she's the best girl and she must beat that guy. And I think competition is still important, but you got to be careful. You can create too competitive and then you stifle good ideas and then great people walk out your door. We've seen it in many organizations. You hear the story of this guy who invented something. He's like, well, I try to tell my bosses, listen, I went on my own and now I'm bigger than they are, which is tough because, things happen and people have bad days. But I think you've got to encourage the conversation.
It's like encouraging collaborative competition and cutting out the gossip.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, you're brilliant. You should have a podcast.
When you think about like the values of your organization and how you live them out, is there one that like stands out above the rest? And then how do you ensure, I get this question all the time from my clients, like, how do I bring that to life in what we do every day, right? I mean, we've talked about like autonomy and trust. Anything else that you say, like, our organization stands for this, and this is what it looks like in practice?
it's not going to be as exciting as I think you're hoping for.
Okay.
People speak about their values, and at the end of the day, the organization has been established to do something, whatever it might be, whether it's a product or service or whatever. As our organization, because we become so intimately connected with our clients and we work with very important software products for the organization, and we're in a very strong trust position in many instances. There is a compliance component, there's a risk component. There's so many elements that if we don't do our job correctly and we don't support our clients correctly, there could be serious damages, significant losses. There could be a significant amount of events that could occur. And when I first started the business, I remember thinking that every company that I was engaging with, they were always telling me all their values, but they weren't giving me service and they weren't really listening to me as the client. So I was getting this great value that they give, come buy my vehicle, and I give all my money away to pandas. And then I'd stand there and say, but I want to buy your vehicle. And the guy would be like, well, there's one over there, go help yourself, kind of thing. And obviously that doesn't exist, but I'm giving an extreme version. But, you know, I walk into a restaurant and you tell me you got the greatest chef, but hell's bells, you've made my life a misery to get to the table. I couldn't get a booking. The servers took their time. They slammed, you know what I mean? There's all these other things that now ruin the event for me. And for so many years, I used to get these eyes rolled at me every time. Like, you know, we talk about all our values. How about this is a simple value? How about our client is our value? Our client gives us our value. Our client gives us our paycheck. Our client affords us opportunities. Our clients are the ones that we have to make front and center, genuinely make front and center as a starting point of our value system, and then build everything around that value system to say that we're continuing to deliver against that primary value system. Our other values, let's talk about our spiritual and social values, could easily be supported if we start with the first part is why we exist as a business, and our clients are the reason why we exist as a business. For all those cool social values, we give 1% of our revenue to our own NGO, to our own charity within our greater group. Those values are more of our own personal values. They're not going to improve how I do my job. So they can't cloud our direction. We have to wake up every day and say, are we producing the best product? Are we delivering the best service for the best value? Not cheapest. We're not a discount shop. You understand? If I was a retailer and I was looking to be the cheapest guy in tile, then that would still be your value. That would be your starting value, and everything else has to then support that. So that's where we start. And then autonomy is important because guess what? I can't be at every meeting, and my number two can't be at every meeting, and my other number two, you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter that they figured it out. Everybody has to figure that out. And we have to keep on reiterating it. So it is a lot of the messaging that we do with our team. We remind them that if we've had clients for 15 years, that's a good thing. But we got to get them for the next 15 years. And how do we retain them for 15 years? And clients will be retained if you continue giving them value and service and all these other things that people speak about. But if you're not making them the center of your world, then I don't believe you're ever going to do that. If you're more concerned about the color of your brand or the fact that you are altruistically on, you know, your social media platforms doing all these cool things in your community, those are so important. I agree. But you've got to start from the most important thing, somewhere along the line. Tell me, what are you doing for me as the client?
I read this book called What's in It for Them. And it was very, very much about that of like, what is the value that you're providing and what's the service and how did they experience the service and what's in it for them, essentially.
And I think we're seeing that full circle. I think we lost our way as the world. About 5 years ago, we lost our way and we made it all about ourselves, which is very selfish. It became a very much what's in it for me type of mentality. I go to my job and what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? And it was like, I get it. You should always be what's in it for me, but it doesn't work if we all just make it about ourselves. We have to make it about ourselves, but we also have to make it about the organization. I said to somebody a couple of years ago, and this person was very unhappy about a number of things. And I asked him and I said, are you a leader in the business? They said, yes. And I said, at everything that you've spoken about at any given moment in your time that you work for me, you could have raised your hand and said, I'm going to fix this. I said, it's equivalent of you living in the house, my own house. We all one big family live in the house, and you've noticed that the paint is not on the wall correctly. And yet you complain about it all the time, but the paint has been right next to you in the paintbrush. And you as a person had absolutely the ability to say, you know what, this is going to be my initiative. I'm going to take control of that. I'm going to paint the wall. I'm going to fix the thing around the house. And I said to them over and over again, I said, I feel sad for you because everything you've said was a great idea. And not once did you say, you know what, I'm going to take this one idea and make it happen within my organization? How do you make your own home? Where you work is your home. I don't know if you've ever seen Japanese school kids. The Japanese people fascinate me about their pride. I envy their pride. They don't have any custodians at the school. How they do it is every child in the school is responsible for something in the school that are custodial type activities, whether it be cleaning floors. Now, here, obviously in America, if my child had to clean up after himself, possibly there might be a right. But maybe that's an extreme version. But I still look at it and say, hold on, if I worked for a company, if I wasn't a leader, would I be unhappy that they haven't done something correctly? But if I was a leader, could I change the way could I improve that process so that the next person who took 6 weeks to get a computer, maybe I could say to the boss, hey, I'm going to pick this one up. I'm going to figure out how we get computers in 2 weeks or 1 week. Let's figure it out. Oh, thank you. Most leaders would go, oh, thank you. I really appreciate you. I've got so much on my plate. I know it's in a priority, but it's maybe further down the priorities. Come back with a plan. Let's figure out what we can do. And that's my philosophy to that.
It's like changing the behaviors like one step at a time. So they start to think different and have that, like, I heard somebody call it proprietor mentality. When you walk into work, not that the whole business is yours, but the piece that you own or the piece that is within your sphere of influence or control, that you take that proprietor mentality and you do something about it, right? You don't step over a piece of trash. You walk, just because you're not the cleanup crew doesn't mean that you just leave it on the floor for the cleanup crew. You walk by, you pick it up just like you would in your own house.
And Kristi, that's the fatal sentence you don't say in our organization. And that's not my job. That's like a death knell. And that's unfortunately where I don't become a nice guy. It's like, what do you mean it's not your job? And years ago, I remember I had to prove a point. We had a big building and we had a lot of students coming in our building in South Africa. And we had a lady that worked at reception, and there was meant to be like a rotation with some of the people in the organization that were deemed as admin and back office. And there were a couple that decided that answering a telephone was beneath them. And it just so happened that was the day when everybody it was not beneath them and would have helped was not in the office. And the only two people in the office that it was beneath them and refused. Now, I didn't know this was happening. Refused to go sit at the. And I came into the building after meeting with a client and there was nobody answering the phones. And it wasn't so much answering the phones, it was also greeting our guests and there was another activity. So I decided I would sit there. Now, the problem was I didn't know how to work the board. So that was a bloody disaster. But I could certainly have, as somebody comes into the building, I could go, welcome to the office. How can I help you? Who are you here to see? Embarrassing moment was a gentleman that came in to see me. And I said, you're looking for Jethro. I said, well, you found him. I just happened to be waiting here for you, whatever it is. And he kind of looked me up and down like, oh my goodness, this is a Mickey Mouse operation. The guys or anything. But as soon as the people had heard that I was sitting there, the two people that felt it was beneath them were very embarrassed. And I wasn't trying to make them feel embarrassed. I was trying to show them that there isn't a job in the organization that we should look down on, because I stand by something and I'll stand by it for the rest of my life. When you walk into any kind of environment, when you walk into a clothing store, when you walk into a corporate office, a headquarters, if you walk into anything, a restaurant, that person who probably isn't the highest paid person in the organization that greets you the first time, in my opinion, is the make or break of the first impression. Now, we're super lucky. Everybody works from home and nobody goes into the office, but we still do interact. I'm going back. People are going back. I'm going to the building. And if somebody at the front desk is miserable, unhappy, doesn't want to look you in the eye, doesn't help you, whatever it is, I think it doesn't bode well for all these vibes that you've been trying to get in your company.
Yes. It's like we're here to gather for a reason and we want like the energy to get the positive momentum. And then you walk in and you're like not greeted. Even going to like coffee shop, you might choose to go to a different coffee shop because you're like, I walked in, there's 5 people behind the counter and they're not one person like said, hey, how's it going? But I just had a recent experience in a furniture store and an electronics store, and they were the best service. Their handoffs were really good too. So I noticed that that's really important of like, let me get you where you need to go versus like, oh, it's just over there. Those tiny little like feeling like care and concern. And I think that's the same in the workplace is like, care and concern for your employees, whatever that looks like, because some days are bad. You're right. Happiness isn't a measurement. It's more about like joy, and joy can come in like different forms. Those like micro moments in between that matter the most. It's not showing up to the holiday party once a year. It's like recognizing these people at the end of the year versus just sending them a quick text to say like, hey, I see you, I hear you, and thank you.
And I think you've spoken about that handoff. They'll only do great handoff if they care about each other. They will only give the sufficient information or only spend the time. We had a project once where we had team members scattered in the United States and South Africa and Australia. And I knew all three separate teams. I knew them all individually, certainly the people that were running those teams. And I all knew all three of them as fabulous guys, like 10 out of 10 people. And yet, every time I was in America, they would complain about the other two teams. If I was in South Africa, they'd complain about the two. And I was in Australia, so forth. And it drove me mad because I didn't understand. I was like, but I bet you if you guys hung out together and had a beer, all of you, girls and guys, you guys would get on like, as Forrest Gump says, peas and carrots, and you would be inseparable, right? And I looked at that and I thought, what do I do? So I spent the money, these ROIs, and I flew everybody out. And I thought, you know what? Everybody wants to go on safari. So I brought everybody to South Africa, got the teams together. And I didn't spend huge amount of money. I put the people together. They spent time together. And then all of a sudden they say, so are you married? Oh, I'm also married. Or no, I'm not married. Or, I've got one kid. Or, oh, I'm also into cars or whatever it might be. There is human connection. There is a reason to give a call to somebody. All of a sudden, maybe they like the same football team or whatever that connection is, or even they don't like it and there's a good rivalry between them. There is a reason for them to connect beyond the fact that they've got to do some kind of handoff or they've got to collaborate on a piece of work together, whatever it is. Now, that's not practical in all cases, but I think if there is no connection, if people don't feel connected, exactly your experience that you had in the furniture store, they wouldn't care to show you to the guy over there that might get commission for you buying that electronic versus their electronic. They'll be like, oh, yeah, it's over there, help yourself. So I think you've given a great example, and I think it would be tougher if I was running a store to get that by, but it would seem that whoever's managing that store is saying, hey, we're all on one team, we're friends, take care of each other. I'll figure out a way to compensate you guys, whatever it might be, whatever that metric is, but he's figured out a way to get them to work together. And I hate it. Kristi, I'm the same as you. I'll walk into a store and my worst nightmare is when the person that I've spoken to says, no, I'm not the right person. And then they literally just walk off. I can't help you. And then they just carry on walking.
Yeah. Like maybe you should walk out and go somewhere else. We have lots of choices, right? So that's the beauty of it. Now, I have one last question, and this idea of connection, because I'm with you. Like I'm such a in-person visual connector. And so this world we work in now is largely remote. And I think I heard you say you guys have gone remote in many places, right? Maybe some are coming back to the office, but how have you been able and what have you done to maintain that connection in this more remote environment?
The first and most important thing is I look at it in layers. So it's almost like a tree structure. I'm going right to the bottom to the furthest leaf. That group has to connect a minimum of a week or once a month together and physically connect, whether they sit in the same boardroom that we either host at a client site or our offices. We do have some offices around the world. They have to, as a metric. So that's a management metric. You have to, okay, pick a day, once every 2 weeks, you all get in the room and you all work from there and you're going to have lunch together, even if you're all on calls, because that's what happens. You're in the same physical space. No matter what happens, they will talk. And what happens, they'll have lunch together. And you know what they'll do? They'll probably use that time more productive and say, you know what, every 2 weeks we need to do catch-ups and burn downs or whatever it might be. We'll use that opportunity to do that. So looking at the furthest leaf thing. I do exactly the same on the other side of it with my leadership and then my very senior leadership. Once a month, at a minimum, we force a day we work together. We don't actually work together. We're just physically in the same workspace. We're chatting. We're saying hello. We're having a cup of coffee at the coffee machine together. We're at the water cooler. You know what happens? Strange thing happens. You go for lunch. You take a half an hour as a team and you go grab a lunch. Everybody's paying for their own lunch. It's not a company hosts a lunch, but we're having lunch. We're sitting, we're talking together and we're hearing about somebody's kid that's done something or whatever it might be. Then you make those bigger. So while they're not connections, we do quite a few regular information sharing sessions where we don't get 100% attendance, but you sort of repeat some of the messages over the year where even if somebody came to 1 out of the 4, they're getting some messaging. So they know that the lights are still on in the business, that they're not living in their cave and cabin. We also have a very strong team of leaders that are very connected to their team. So they also then make recommendations over the year. Certain times of the year, a team needs a bit of a team building. And by team building, I don't mean we all beat a drum and talk about our feelings. I mean, hang out team building. Okay. It's a hangout team building. It's do something together. It's laugh. It's relax. It's take a breath. Everybody works under high pressure scenarios. Everybody's got to win, got to finish, got to get things on time. Sometimes you just need to take a breath, pat each other on the back, say congrats or whatever it might be. And then not only me, but some of the senior leadership, we kind of do rotations through the year where we connect with certain teams through report backs and feedback sessions. And then maybe in that, you're doing promotions in that team or in that group or whatever it might be. It is an active process. I am lucky that I don't like to sit alone in the office all on my own. So I naturally want to go hang out and say hi and do that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm not seeing everybody. I don't know everybody. That's not the purpose. But hopefully if I'm doing enough of it with my leaders, then I'm reminding it, hey, have you done it with your team? They go, yes, I see my team. So it's kind of that autonomy to say, be with your people. And the feedback that I get when I do verbally, personally check with the individuals is they will then often boast about how cool their manager is, which is then I know that is the right feedback. So they're going, no, my manager did this for me and we got this right and he helped me do this and I'm doing this course. And so then I'm going, wow, there we go. Now we've done what we needed, because you see, most people need a little bit of individual attention as opposed to this macro. I gave you a water cooler on the 13th floor that gives you sparkling water and you should be happy. You understand? You should be engaged now. So that's what we...
They're like, I don't like sparkling water.
Exactly. Well, you were the only one who said he didn't. The other 95 of you said they did. So toughies for you. Yeah, you're getting sparkling water.
Oh my gosh. I have a feeling we could talk for hours on this topic, because I think you and I both are so passionate about just like doing the simple things to have a big impact, right? It doesn't have to be big, like the E word, I'll call it, of engagement. It's just like, what do people want and how do we make it happen? And at their most basic needs level, it doesn't have to be complicated. And I love your idea of like autonomy and trust have to be given in order to create the vibe. That's just like a fundamental basic thing that needs to be honored in order to receive. So
Agreed.
I love that. Okay, so I have a little fun, I'll call it a lightning round. It's like this or that, right? Just to get to know you a little bit more. So I'll ask you a couple and then you just shoot off whatever's on top of mind.
Okay.
So, okay, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Do you have any?
No. I had a lot of pets growing up. I have a mother that's a veterinarian, and if she would have replaced me for one of the cats or dogs, she would have. And the resultant fact is, as an adult, some people look at us with those, I cannot believe your kid doesn't have a dog or a cat, whatever it is. I've realized that our lifestyle of huge amount of travel and sort of spontaneity, and dogs and cats don't go together. So I always say to my kids, one day, when you leave, I'll probably have the sad, I'll become one of those people like, oh my goodness, my kids left the house. And then I'll get like 10 dogs. But until that time happens, there are no cats and dogs. But if I had to choose, I think cats have got like they're crazy characters. I think they're mad. So I quite enjoy them.
That's awesome. All right. Beach or mountains?
I can't decide. I want both. And you can't make me decide. I refuse. I love to ski and I love to scuba dive. So I don't want to decide.
Awesome. Morning or night?
Night.
And like streaming services at home or going to the theater?
Going to the theater.
And let's see, text or calling?
Calling.
Awesome.
I have a caveat. If I don't like you, can you rather text me? Is there some kind of filter I can put on the phone? We all have people in our lives and we don't, they drive us mad. And then they're the ones that phone. And then the people that we love text. My kids bloody text me. And I wish they would phone me. You know what I mean?
They text you from the other room, because my 14-year-old does. She'll be in her bedroom and she's like, Mom, where are you? I'm like, I'm literally
I'm like in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm there. I found myself the other day texting my son in the house. So it does happen both ways.
Or I'll call my daughter and she'll not answer and then she'll text me back. I'm like, what the heck, man?
Yeah. What do you want?
Awesome. Okay, well, so we'll end with this. If there is one piece of advice or one thing a leader listening to this could walk away with and go do right now, what would that one thing be that you recommend?
Don't become the image of what some other leader is that you now aspire to be like. But learn from that leader and become your own person. So everybody always asks you, you became a leader, who was your inspiration? And then they use big ones. They go like Nelson Mandela, or they do John F. Kennedy or Ronald Reagan or something. I mean, these guys that have had thousands of circumstances that have made them the amazing leader they are, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. I mean, and these guys, there were so many circumstances that created who they were. And then they write books about their amazing habits. And then you as a leader go, oh my goodness, I don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and read 60 books before lunchtime. And I must be a failed leader. And what happens is you don't become an authentic version of yourself, because what you've done now is you've been put in a position of decision making. You've been put in a position of stress to a large degree. Every leader will tell you you're stressed 100% of the time, 100% of the time. There's always something. There's always, unfortunately, an escalation, a risk, a challenge, a hard decision, or whatever it is. Somewhere in there, you still got to be the authentic version of who you are. You got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is actually who I am. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't enjoy it. I'm not going to do it from that perspective. I think people can see through that crap, because you'll get people that you will let into your circle, and then they will be disappointed if you're not who they are. And I think they'll way be more impressed if you're just a human that knows that you're going to do good things and you're going to make bad choices. You're going to make some great choices. And you are doing it with the highest level of authenticity and integrity to yourself, then I think you'll be a great leader. But I think if you pretend to be something that you're not, because somebody in a book told you, the 7 reasons to be successful, I think you're hurting yourself. And I was on a panel and they said, write your introduction. And the 3 other leaders, they had like telephone directories of how amazing they were. And it was like, this person's done this and that and whatever it is. And they said, what have you done? It's like, I don't know. I don't remember, because I'm only thinking about what I'm going to be doing next, because what I did before is just a building block for what I need to do next. And my best thing still hasn't happened. The best thing I've ever done in my life has yet to happen, besides my kids. But the principle of, I haven't done my best thing yet. I haven't really got to where I wanted to be. I haven't achieved exactly everything I want. Every day I'm trying to do better, and I'm trying to do greater for myself and for the people around me. Then I wouldn't be spending all the time going, look how wonderful I am, and everybody should love me. And look, my secret to success is, I stretch every morning. Good for you. Some people don't like to get up and, you know what I mean? And I think we are so hammered in it. This person's successful. Jennifer Aniston, 60 years old, and the hottest woman alive. Her secret is she drinks a glass of hot water, and all these moms are like, oh my God, I want to look like Jennifer Aniston. I'm like, stop. And I think the same thing happens with leaders. We get perception from a journalist what the inner workings of that person's successes. And we think, well, in order for me to be successful, I have to be the same way. No, you need to be your own person. You need to be authentic to yourself. And if you're not authentic to yourself, I think you're going to be unhappy.
It's just like ridden with anxiety, right? Because then you're just worried all the time if you're doing the right thing of this other person versus like what comes naturally out of you.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Well, this was so much fun. I appreciate your authenticity in sharing the simple things, I would say, in life that can bring great success. And obviously you're a testament to that with your organization. So I just really appreciate the stories you've shared and the vibes that you bring. You're impacting people that are going and impacting the world. And that's just like chef's kiss. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Wow, what a great perspective from my conversation with Jethro. I love how he keeps things simple, and that is what brings the vibes to his organization. It is so awesome to see how he described the clients giving value to the organization and that they are front and center of the value system. All other values can be supported if we start with the why the company exists as a business, which is the client. Incredibly simple, yet so often forgotten. Something else that stuck out to me, which is also a pet peeve of mine, is when he described the fatal flaw of an organization. When someone says, "That's not my job." How embarrassed would you have been if you were the team member who thought answering the phones was beneath you, only to see the founder of the company doing it because no one else would? Wow. Talk about walking the walk. You can find Jethro on LinkedIn at Jethro Lloyd or his company's website, iLabquality.com. If this episode inspired you and you want to see how you can take the next step to creating a better vibe within your organization, I'd love for you to download our complimentary 75 Vibes worksheet. This is a simple tool to create a habit and mindset around creating great vibes in work and life. The best part, it's simple and it works.